It's true that genocide isn't recommended in Genesis. You have to read several books on before you are commanded to leave not one child of the Amalekites behind. And the rabbi knows this to be true, and some of you may know it to be true as well. There are learned debates between rabbis in Israel today, including rabbis of the Israeli Defense Forces, on whether or not that commandment is still extant. In other words, whether the fact that there are no more Amalekites means that the commandment doesn't work anymore. And learned commentaries are published on the possible applicability of this genocidal commandment to present-day conditions. To know this is to tremble at the effect of religion on a people who, Rabbi and I both have a share in this, are not supposed to have a reputation for bovine stupidity, let alone for racism, let alone for superstition. I'm forced to take this seriously, given what I've just had to hear. I personally think I probably could overthrow the arguments for National Socialism in a fairly short time. I've had great difficulty persuading myself that its founder and leader was a rational person. I wouldn't have declared war on the Soviet Union, the British Empire, and the United States on the same year myself, hoping to have a 1,000-year Reich. It wouldn't be the right way to go about it. He wouldn't be the first person to say that the unfit should be killed. The rabbi is perfectly correct in saying that many humanists, Margaret Sanger was one who flirted with it, one of the founders of the family planning movement, that there was a belief that the unfit didn't deserve a chance. And you can find this in ancient philosophy as well. But there's nothing secular about it. It is a barbarous superstition. It is an inheritance from our primitive, fearful past. There's no secular case to be made for genocide. Indeed, the whole point about, excuse me, not genocide, for eugenics, the whole point about our side is that we revere the brain. If Hawking had no limbs at all and only a brain, we'd like him the better for it. But we wouldn't say, we would have something to ask perhaps about the person who designed him like that. The chances anyone would ever notice that Hawking had a brain were very slight. And I noticed that when people say, well, look at all we have to be thankful for, or look at what's so wonderful, they mean when the baby falls out of the window and bounces on the roof of a soft car, don't they? They say, oh, there, God had it in his hands. They have nothing to say when the ditches are full of dead babies, and no one did a thing. Look at the beauty of the design of the plague bacillus, or the incredible eagerness and hunger and ruthlessness and beauty of the cancer cell, or the cobra. Who created all this, is what I want to know. If someone wants to take credit for this creation, let them take credit for the whole thing, and for all the despair and misery that goes with it, for the babies that are born without brains at all, or with cancer, or with no chance of living beyond a day. Who's responsible for that? In what mysterious way is the divinity moving when this occurs? Wouldn't you rather think, harsh though it is, that at least it is random? But no, the solipsism must go on. I had no idea how bad Bill Bryson's work was till this evening. You can look at the solar system, okay? I forget how many planets has it got, 9, 10? They keep finding more baby ones, okay? Well, I know this much, I don't know how many of them there are, but most of them are either too fucking hot or too fucking cold for anything remotely like life to occur. That's just one solar system. That's how many abortions. Nature aborts. Who doesn't know that? Nature takes life. Nature kills. Nature kills in the womb. It must do. It's part of our evolutionary pattern. It's part of what we're born with, I'm sorry to say. Nature aborted half the planets in the solar system. What are the conditions on our own hollow little planet, a wonderful little place? Well, a good deal of our planet is either too fucking hot or too fucking cold as well to support life. And it's on a knife edge climatically, as we all know. We don't know why. I don't claim to know, by the way, why there's a climatic crisis at the moment. But I know that there is one. I'm hoping someone will tell me who's mandated it and for what reason. Or is it possible that it's an event in the evolution of the solar system? I think it's a great deal more likely, unless you have the solipsism to believe that the conditions have favored your own emergence, they must be benign. That's not modesty. Above all, it's not objectivity. It isn't detachment. It's not rationality. It is none of the above. It's mere superstitious self-centeredness. I yield my 2 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. I think if I haven't persuaded you by now, I shan't succeed. I think the Rabbi and I both agreed before this began that we would make the assumption that nobody comes here just to sit and listen, and that we all know what we're here for. So I yield back my time and I give it to you. And don't waste it. Bye now.
I find it astonishing that a champion of the oppressed, as distinguished as Christopher Hitchens, would so skew the historical record about who is responsible by far for the greatest atrocities in the history of mankind. First of all, let me say absolutely that as far as why so many bad things are done in the name of religion, it's simple. God did not give 10 commandments, which is the essence of religious morality. He gave 2 tablets of 5 commandments each. They didn't come on one long list. Simple point. First 5 are all about God. I'm the Lord your God. You shall know of the gods before me. The second is all about morality. We call this ethical monotheism. It's the twin pillars of religion. A, there's a God who is the source of all right and wrong, and you have no right to interpret it. B, God's first demand of you is compassionate, moral, and ethical behavior. And if you betray that, you've betrayed God. If you look at any example of religious immoral behavior, it has all come down to a single point, which is that even religious people often think that they have a right to reinterpret morality, and they stray from the 10 commandments. But I say that Christopher Hitchens has so significantly misrepresented the historical record because the greatest atrocities in the history of the world have been performed by secular atheistic regimes. Adolf Hitler hated religion, despised it. That's why they chose the swastika. It was a pagan symbol. Nietzsche was trumpeted as the great philosopher of Nazism, and what did Nietzsche say? The core of Nietzsche's philosophy can be reduced to this, that the Jews played a giant joke on the world called this buffoon named the Christian. The Jews took great, strong, courageous Teutonic knights and instilled within them compassion and mercy and long-suffering. What the heck? And the Germans were dumb enough to swallow this crap, this Jewish lie, this fable. Read Martin Bormann's book, Hitler's Table Talk. It's riddled with Hitler's hatred of all religion because religion took away from him his capacity to define morality. So he killed 12 million. How many did Mao Zedong kill? Between 30 and 50 million. I didn't see him believing in God. What about Stalin? Between 30 and 40 million. Not exactly a great lover of God or religion either. How about Pol Pot in Cambodia, who killed 1 out of 3 Cambodians? If you want to get to a numbers game, it is Paul Johnson, who happens to be Catholic, but I know that, I assume you know him, Christopher, the great British historian, who I had the pleasure of drinking a lot of good whiskey with when I lived in England. It was the chosen single malt, actually, better than the beer. He's the one that estimates that secular, utopian, atheistic regimes have killed 100 million people in the 20th century alone. That's in his book, Modern Times. 100 million people. And it's interesting. Look what Christopher Hitchens is doing. Look at the illogical, irrational core of his arguments. He begins with a religious argument that life is sacred and life cannot be taken. He then uses religion against himself. Oh, now that I embrace and endorse do not kill, why does God command us to kill all these people like the Amalekites? Now that's a good question, but the problem is, where did he begin with the premise that we shouldn't be doing that anyway? Everyone believed, the reason why these great dictators killed so many, 30 million, 50 million, Stalin didn't hate the Russians, he just wanted to industrialize. So he collectivized the farms and people died of starvation. That's what Mao did in the Cultural Revolution. The larger good, rationally, when you only have your mind, it makes sense that 1 billion people's needs outweighs 30 million so they can die. That's what Castro, another secular, atheistic communist, did in Cuba. If you had AIDS, they stuck you in a prison forever. You didn't even commit a crime. You may have gotten it through a blood transfusion, but that's logical. You see, why should one person's well-being threaten an entire population? The argument? Do not kill. This person's just as important as anyone else, unless they're morally culpable. That's different. Fascinating how you could begin. And you know, it was the philosopher Robert Nozick from Harvard who made the point. He called this cut flower ethics. And it's a trick that a lot of people in these debates use. And it's what Christopher is using tonight. You begin with religious ethics, 10 commandments. Do not kill, life is sacred. You cut it out from where it grows in its soil. You now transplant it and say, we don't need religion, that's garbage. We'll just stay with the ethics. Guys, you know what happens to flowers when they're taken out of the soil? They wither and die. That's what happened to all these atheistic regimes. That's why so many people died. I'm not excusing the horrors in the name of religion. But if you have ethical monotheism, you can never do that. And that's why the Jewish people who have so insisted on ethical monotheism are not guilty of atrocities, thank God. As far as, Christopher's right. The Bible's commandments about destroying the Amalekites is something that Jewish scholars, because they have a conscience, have struggled with from time immemorial. And the best they've come up with is, first of all, it was God's commandment. We don't understand it. It can never be done today. The fact that some fanatics discuss it, well, we have a Baruch Goldstein, but we condemn people like him. But the most we've come up with is that Churchill, revered by the British and I think the whole West as the greatest statesman of the 20th century,